What is up, everybody? Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joe Lalgee, and on this week's episode, we've got a ton to talk about. Everything from another return to the office, a complete failure, all the way to a layoff that might actually warm your heart, and a lesson on how to actually do layoffs, along with some other thoughts around the future of work, including more of our Gen Z generation getting into the construction industry. As always, if you guys don't know me, my name's Joel. I've been in the recruitment space for about a decade, and this podcast is all about the world of work, everything from like remote work to recruitment to job search. As many of you guys know, right now, the job market is really, really tough. And there's a lot of job seekers that I talk to who are having a struggle. So I want to bring you the news on what's going on in the world of work and give tips along the way for those on the job search. We're also going to be introducing a new segment in the next couple of weeks where I'm going to bring in some of the world's top talent leaders who are actually running recruitment teams to get their thoughts on the future of work, what it takes to be successful in career, and so much more. So you can stay in touch with the podcast by going to www.therealistrecruiter.com. On there, you're going to find everything from how to work with me if you're looking to hire, all the way to if you're looking for me to come in and do some consulting. And then we have all of the episodes, all the past episodes of this podcast, which we're on like episode 90. We've got all the past episodes as well that you can go and check out. And we release this podcast every single week. So super excited to be with you. And as always, if you got questions, if you actually subscribe to that podcast newsletter, you'll be able to ask questions along the way. And it's got links to all my socials as well. So I thought we could start off this week. I wanted to have a little bit of a feel-good moment, which we had a feel-good moment last week as well. Maybe I'm just feeling that, you guys have had so much negative news over the last year with the job market and how it's been. We need to see some good stuff. So I want to share my screen here. And for any of you that don't see the video, you're going to hear the audio here in just a second. But the caption says, "I got laid off today." So this is another layoff video, but with kind of a spin. So I'm going to let it play.
So I have news that I don't want to share with you, but I have to.
Okay, I'm prepared.
And this is why I was telling you yesterday, all the things that I said, which 100% are true. I am so proud of you and the work that you've done. As part of a company-wide restructure, we have to eliminate certain roles, and unfortunately, your role has been affected. I really enjoyed working with you. And like I've said 100 million times, I feel like a proud mom, like seeing you blossom and turn into this wonderful teammate has been nothing short of a true pleasure.
I don't ever look at things like this as like it's happening to me. It's more so happening for me.
Yeah. So again, I'm sorry. I know you're an optimistic person, so it sucks. I'm sorry.
It's all a part of the process. Again, to me, I've learned so much. Obviously, like I'm sad to part ways with the people that I met here, but I don't necessarily have to part ways. I can still talk to them. This might just be that final step that God's like, okay, you're gonna go all in. You need to go all in. Thank you. I really do appreciate you. Thank you. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Seriously.
Man, it's so crazy. So my initial thoughts with this whole video is, number one, obviously we've seen a lot of layoffs that have been recorded. In fact, I've seen about 3 other layoffs in the past week of people recording their layoffs that were not like this at all. And then if you recall, there was a lady from Cloudflare, Brittany, who's really awesome. She has landed a job, by the way. So congratulations to Brittany. But Brittany recorded her layoff after being on a sales team, and it went viral. And I think so many people were asking questions about how can leaders can be so cold, right? And I think what I love about that layoff video was the fact that you could just tell that manager cared. They were showing emotion. They were showing empathy, and saying, hey, I've loved working with you. This has been really difficult. And There's just like emotion there. But the other thing I loved, honestly, was just like the response of the person that got laid off as well. And they're like, I'm going to miss people here, but this doesn't need to even be the end. Talking about how, sometimes God opens up different opportunities. And she was just really looking at it as like, hey, this is the opportunity I needed. And I love at the end, like there's that pause. And then right at the end, she says, sink or swim. Look, things happen, right? But I just think the whole way that situation was handled, from the empathy that the manager used. And I think if you're a manager out there, this is the issue with some of these layoff videos, is like it's done so robotically with HR. I get it, like, because HR, I have tons of friends in HR. Like, you can't necessarily like have emotion for everybody, especially if you don't know them and you're just being brought in. But I think there's just something about like, what type of leader are you? And like, do you actually care about people? And again, I know that so many people in HR do care. And I don't think there's people in HR that don't care. And it's obviously going to be different, like if you don't know somebody personally. But again, I just think it's so important for companies when they're doing layoffs to like just show that you care, because on the front side, and this is kind of where the whole issue is, like recruiting teams are going to say, we got a great culture. We relate to people. We want to bring people to bring in. We want them to feel belonging. We care about you. Like that language is used a lot within recruitment. And so I think people get disenchanted when it's like, all right, we're doing a reorg and we don't need you anymore. You got any questions? Bye. Right. And so I really like that example. So the shout out to that leader, just sound like you are somebody that I would want to work for, somebody that actually cares. And then shout out to the creator there who actually lost their job. No doubt, like with your attitude and the way that you took it, you were going to do huge things. Talking about corporate and talking about some of this corporate culture, obviously the return to office, I feel like it's just a never ending saga. And it's great for me because so much of my content is around remote work, of flexibility and all that kind of stuff. I think oftentimes people will think that like I'm remote work pro, which I am when it makes sense. But what I really am a pro of is like allowing people to work in the environment that they're going to get the best work done. So for me, I started working remotely in 2015, way before the pandemic. And I found like I could really focus. And even now, I just get so much accomplished when I'm just like focused. I'm in my zone. I'm in like my office area, my studio area, which this is, where I got a big screen. Like if you guys could see, I have like a huge screen. I've got my setup. I've got my lights. I've got a TV even that I could focus. But it's just like I can come down here and I can get my work done. And when I would go to the office, similar to how when I was at school, I got in trouble all the time for like distracting people. I could constantly be distracting people. That just wasn't the right environment for me. The other thing is too, is like a lot of these companies, and we'll get to talk about one in just a second. A lot of these companies, if you go back and you look at like name a company, remote work, a lot of these companies were talking about how they were going to have people work remotely forever. So you get hired by the recruiter. The recruiter said, yeah. Don't worry, we're going to be remote forever. And a lot of these companies are shifting. So I'm going to play this video. This video is from my personal TikTok. If you go to The Realist Recruiter on TikTok, you'll be able to see this video. For anyone who is just watching this, the headline says, and this is the headline I wrote, the headline says, can't find childcare, no problem. Use your PTO. Dell fails again with the RTO. So this is about Dell again. let me go back to the screen here. I'm going to share this so you guys will actually be able to see it. So here we go. Again, headline, can't find childcare, no problem. Use your PTO. Dell fails under RTO. And then we'll read through some of these comments as well, since it is my post. So I'm going to play this. If you can't find childcare, take it out of your PTO. Our friends at Dell are back in the news regarding their return to office policy. If you recall, Dell made the news early this year when they told employees they had to come back to the office 5 days a week or they could quit. They also made statements saying that if you stayed working remotely, you wouldn't get promoted. Well, now something even worse is happening. They're saying if you cannot find people to take care of your kids, you need to actually take it out of your PTO. Guys, if you have kids, you know how hard it is to find childcare right now. And it's really hard, especially if you've had a remote kind of hybrid relationship with work. It's really hard to go back to the office and find childcare for your kids. It's really expensive and it's just really, really hard. Unfortunately, these policies are going to hurt single moms more than anyone else. because if they can't find somebody to look after their kids, they're now being told that they need to take PTO. So PTO that was supposed to be there for your mental health, to recover, to recoup, is now being used to look after kids because childcare is impossible. This is not the way to do a return to office. So other companies need to take a look at Dell and make sure they don't do the same things. Otherwise, they are going to be in the headlines next. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Recruiting is No Joke. We'll be right back to this episode, but first, I wanted to thank this week's sponsors of the podcast, Source Whale. Source Whale is revolutionizing personalized outreach. It's not just user-friendly, it's a powerhouse with custom variables, automated follow-ups, and multi-channel capabilities, including phone, LinkedIn, email, and much more. Here's what makes it stand out. Users have seen an average increase of 56% in qualified response rates. With Source Whale, you're equipped with AI-powered tools like Content Coach and Whale GPT. This ensures that your messages rise above the rest, especially with Google's latest delivery updates. These tools have been trained on over 21 million pieces of top-performing outreach content, fine-tuning your strategy to secure better engagement, more meetings, and of course, higher revenue. Source Whale integrates seamlessly with your CRM and ATS. It automates the mundane, organizes your outreach, and even cues you on who to contact next, freeing you up to focus on what you do best, recruiting. Ready to revolutionize your outreach? Visit sourcewhale.com/realistrecruiter and see why thousands of top recruiters are making the switch today. All right, so let's take a look at some of these comments. So the recruiter's playbook, who's a friend, says it takes time to find childcare, like a year. And this is kind of the issue here. Like when the pandemic hit, a lot of people who worked in those childcare facilities quit. And there's multiple reasons. Like my wife used to work in a childcare facility, like an early childcare facility. And number one, the pay in those places is terrible. Okay. Like you don't make barely any money. And on top of that, if you got a pandemic flying around and there's lots of sickness, you're going to be less likely to want to work in those environments, right? And then there's like a rising cost of it as well. So not only do you have, there's less people working in these positions, they can't keep them, which means there's less childcare available. Even if you can find it, it's going to be super expensive. But the Recruiter's Playbook says it takes time to find childcare. Someone else said the problem is that people took the job initially with the understanding it was in office and there's no mention of remote. It puts them in a bad spot. Dell can freely push them out for non-compliance, which is fair. But like even if you got the job prior to the pandemic when everything was remote, you know, and then it shifted to remote, regardless of that, it's like we live in a different world. So surely you've got to make some concessions. Someone else said corporations would do anything except make the employee's life more manageable. Someone else said, what does Dell even do anymore? Someone said, I saw one lady calling around childcare prices on here and it was $9.25 a week. It's like, there's a money issue. There's just so many issues here. But I think the reality is like, you're actually going to penalize single parents. And I said in here, like single moms, but it's really single parents, right? Like if you're a single dad or a single mom, like you were going to, like imagine working for Dell and they're like, hey, can't find anyone to look after your kids? Don't worry, take your PTO. And you're like, dude, I need my PTO so I can like unplug from like the stresses of work and now I'm having to use it. So I don't know what the legalities are here. Maybe we could get Ryan, the attorney on Instagram or TikTok to come through and school us on this, but it's just not a good look, right? It's not a good look because it just shows like, hey, we don't really care about you guys. Like, and I think this is the whole issue, right? It's like the way that they've done things, it's just seeming like they do not care at all about employees. And I don't even have a problem with that. Like if you don't care about your employees, that's fine. But it's like, you know, if you're going to get a job there, they're going to talk about how great their culture is. Like, I would love to see, and I'm gonna do this here, the Dell career page. So I'm going to the Dell career page, and let's just see like what it says, because I bet you it says progress. Their thing says progress takes you, and then says here at Dell Technologies has endless challenges and rewards, opportunities across the globe. Located in our office, a team fueled by collaboration, a culture that fosters innovation and values a diverse and inclusive workplace. Actually, the studies show that like when you force people back to the office, you get less diverse, but that's fine. Here at Dell Technologies, and then they kind of say the same thing. Our culture is defined by our values and made real every day how we work and lead. We know our culture is the foundation to what we've achieved. This is our culture code. I read these things and I'm like, Do you really care that much? It doesn't really seem like it. So that's an epic fail. And I would just encourage like any other companies, if you're looking to bring people back to the office, I personally do not think this is the way that you want to go. And I think you're going to continue to make headlines. And what's going to be really interesting, I brought this up to, I was in a lunch with a bunch of like HR leaders and talent leaders. And one of the questions I asked was like, I don't have a problem with whatever your stance is. If you're diehard, go back to the office, that's fine. But are a lot of these companies, once it starts getting hard to recruit people, right? Because that will happen because we actually have a talent shortage, regardless of where we are right now. But once more companies start to hire, is that when a lot more companies are going to start offering remote work and kind of shift again? But I just think like whatever your stance is from this point on, like you just got to stick with it. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Again, if you go to www.therealistrecruiter.com, you can sign up for the podcast newsletter. You can find me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. You know, it's a good move, bad move. What do you think about this whole situation? So the next piece of news I thought was really interesting because I think I used to do recruiting in this space. This article says the tool belt generation, why teens are losing faith in college. And it just says teens are losing faith in college, giving rise to interest in the skills trades. So basically it just talks about how during the pandemic, a lot less, or starting in the pandemic, a lot less people have been applying to college. It's just been going down and down and down. And then they also said, you know, there's worries over like the craziness of student loans and how expensive they are. And then more and more companies are actually dropping the requirements for those college degrees as well. But then interestingly, at the end, it talks about like how more and more people are now going into like apprenticeships. So like that's rose by like 64% over the past few years. And a lot more people have jumped into like vocational programs. So those are like the technical kind of programs where you learn a trade. And now we really need this because for any of you guys who don't know, you know, there is a real shortage. So like construction is one of those fields that's continuing to grow. And I used to recruit in construction, and a lot of the people I recruited, particularly in the field, so these are the people who are like managing the job sites, a lot of them were older. So a lot of the superintendents I used to recruit, they were great people, but they were just older. You know, they've been doing work for 35, 40 years. And it would be really, really rare that I would run across a superintendent that was like below the age of like 50. There were some that were like 35, 40, but they were like in demand, but there just wasn't that many people. So I know personally like quite a few people who have started like the trades within the HVAC industry, like doing air conditioning, both at a residential and corporate level. So I think we're going to continue to see this. And I think a lot of people like the idea of going to an office and, you know, these corporate jobs, it's just not as exciting potentially as these hands-on jobs. And I will say with like a lot of these trades jobs, like you can make really, really good money, and you can also end up owning businesses, which I think more and more people are seeing. You know, you get a good client base, you can really, really grow a nice business. So I think number one, this is great for our economy because we need more people in these skilled positions. It's also great for young people who are getting into these fields because this type of work is going to be hard to disrupt with AI, right? Like it's going to be hard to think of somebody like a robot doing your plumbing. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that that technology could exist, but we're a long way from that. And I think with where the job market is right now, it's going to make sense. The only advice I have like for that industry is I think that industry just doesn't do the greatest job in terms of like bringing people in. That's one of the complaints I do hear about when people are doing these apprenticeships. Are they getting a job, you know, doing plumbing or electrician? It's hard work, but it's also like those environments are kind of tough. So a lot of people do say that they get treated poorly. So my advice to like these companies and these industries is like, you got to figure out a way to attract and like retain these younger workers. So when they're coming in, I get it. Like you want to kind of treat people, you know, in a way that's like tough and like old school, but you know, you have to acknowledge the fact that like this is a different generation. And so you got to create environments that they actually want to be in if this is going to sustain. But I think it's great news. I think it's super exciting. And I'd be interested to know from you, like, are your kids or are you, you know, yourself, maybe you're a younger listener to this podcast, are you considering going into the trades? You could let me know by signing up for that podcast letter and then just staying in touch with me as well. The next article that I saw, which I thought was something that I've been seeing more and more of as well, It's also in line with like those jobs reports. We now are seeing more and more people holding multiple jobs. In fact, multiple job holders account for 5.3% of all employed. So that is almost 8 million people are working multiple jobs. The reason that people are working multiple jobs at the end of the day is because their jobs just are not paying as much as they did. It's got a chart here too that kind of shows like where these jobs land, and it's gone down. It went down quite a lot in actually 2021. It was at like one of the lowest points, and now it's kind of gone up as well. But look, there's just so many reasons that people are going to take on multiple jobs. I think with inflation as high as it is, that's one reason. I think a lot of people are just looking for more money, right? And so I think people are taking on multiple jobs. We're hearing about millions and millions of people taking on side hustles as well. And then people just aren't feeling as safe in their jobs right now. I think a lot of us feel like, at any moment you could lose your job. You could get one of those calls like we saw earlier where you're getting laid off. And obviously like layoffs are still continuing. So I think a lot of people are feeling like, all right, I've got to take multiple jobs. I've got to be able to put food on the table because prices are rising. But the other thing is too, is when you look at all of these people who have multiple jobs, the other thing to think about is these are jobs that are included in the jobs report. And if you guys saw it last week, we talked about how, in my opinion, those reports are kind of nonsense. I don't think that they do a good job. And in fact, Labor Bureau Statistics or Bureau of Labor Statistics, they admitted that they overestimated how many jobs there were. So I don't think they're taking into account the fact that people are taking extra jobs. A lot of those jobs are going to be part-time, but some of them are going to be full-time. So I'm curious to hear from you guys as well. Like, let me know, are you working multiple jobs? Is that something that you've thought of? Do you have a side hustle? I would love to hear like your thoughts on that as well. But that is it for this today's episode of Recruiting is No Joke. Hopefully, you felt good with that layoff and just seeing like how like a layoff situation, can be like that. Sometimes it can be an open door. I'm also curious to hear from you guys on whether or not you've got multiple jobs. I'd love to hear more about people who are going into the trades, like why you're going into that. And if you want more information on me, you can go to www.therealistrecruiter.com. And like I said, in the next few weeks, we're going to be bringing on more and more talent leaders as well. Would love to get talent leaders who are able to talk about the current situation with the job market, give some really, really good advice to you guys as well. So as always, if you are interested in being in a show, if you're interested in sponsoring the show as well, you could do that. Just go to www.therealistrecruiter.com and you can apply for both of those. It's been a great episode this week. I'm super excited. Hopefully you guys have a good week and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one. Great having you as the audience, and I appreciate every single one of you.